What's up, my dude? So I just wanted to help out a smaller MX Simulator YouTuber here. I've had him on my team for a while. His name's Carl Novak. Big Novak, you know what I'm saying, dog? This dude's sick. Definitely go check his channel out. He's just started making some MX Sim videos. You know, he's getting like 25 views a pop on them. Definitely help a dude ski out, you know what I'm saying? It's hard when you first start making videos on YouTube, especially on a game like MX Simulator where it's not like a really popular game. It's kind of hard to get to popping off on it, right? So I'll leave a link down below in the description and the comments to his channel, but all you got to do is type in Carl Novak and you'll find it. But yeah, just wanted to help out the smaller YouTuber. Okay, so in this video, we're going to be talking about MX versus ATV Pro. Now, before you get literal PTSD from thinking about MX GP Pro, that's not what I'm talking about at all right here, okay? MX GP Pro was a complete failed attempt at a pro-style motocross game or a next-level physics, like arcade sim hybrid, whatever you want to call it, type motocross game out there, right? Completely failed attempt at that. And I feel like every time now that we even think of that sort of possibility of like a whatever pro style motocross game, kind of makes us throw up in our mouth a little bit, right? It's definitely not a good feeling just because we think back to the days of the instant pop-off MX GP Pro janky physics system, you know, all that kind of stuff that came along with that game. So I feel like it kind of makes everybody a little weary, a little scared of this whole idea. And I'm not saying this has to be like something that MX versus ATV does in their next game or whatever, but I'm just talking about somewhere along down the lines in the future. Could be kind of like a spin-off game or something. I don't really know. It doesn't have to be like a, you know, the next MX versus ATV or whatever, but wouldn't it be cool to have like an MX versus ATV reflex style game, but it's like just amped up a little bit more in every way, as far as skill gap, as far as track difficulty, as far as, you know, overall feeling on the bike, like a little bit more. I'm not saying you got to take it to a whole nother like simulator level or whatever, but just a little pushing it just a little more that sort of direction, right? I just think that would be really interesting to have that kind of a MX versus ATV game at some point, right? And I love Reflex. I mean, Reflex is my favorite arcade motocross game of all time. It will forever be my favorite arcade motocross game of all time. And it's kind of bizarre because some people consider Reflex like an arcade sim hybrid. I don't consider it that at all. I consider Reflex just a good arcade motocross game. Just a good, solid, skill-gapped, but still easy, still caters to everybody style arcade motocross game. But you can get so deep into it that it's insane. You can literally get like 3 years every day playing the game like I did. 3, 4, 5 years every day, really. That's more like what I played on Reflex. But I mean, you could just get stupid deep into that game as far as the skill gap side of it, but it was still easy for grandma to play, you know what I'm saying? So, and this is kind of going into that whole, like, a true motocross arcade sim hybrid, kind of like what the whole LCQ Studios is trying to do. Yeah. You know, that game that's probably never going to come out? Like, I don't know what they're doing over there at LCQ Studios. I know it's a small group of dudes making the game, but man, I feel like there's going to be one of these bigger motocross game companies go in there and make a true good arcade sim style hybrid game before LCQ Studios gets around to doing it. Like, literally, I think that's going to happen. Like, Milestone already kind of tried to do it with MXGP Pro, even though they epically failed at it. But the whole point of this video is, like, what if MX versus ATV made like what MXGP Pro was trying to be, but better? You know what I'm saying? That's what I'm talking about. And maybe with this next MX versus ATV game, maybe it'll be more like a Reflex and be more advanced physics and all that anyways, but not necessarily to like a pro level, you know, but it might still be really advanced and good in that kind of sense. I don't know. But LCQ Studios was kind of the ones trying to do this whole sim hybrid motocross game thing. I don't even know if they're going to be able to do that at this point. They've been going through some struggles, not been developing the game quite fast enough. I know they've kind of been, asking the community for trade-offs, like we might not have it as simulator-esque at the start if we want to release it in this decade. I mean, I don't know, like they're kind of having to start doing a lot of weird things like that. But one interesting thing that LCQ Studios had kind of brought up was like having this whole real, like, you start on a small bike and you start at Loretta Lynn's and you got to work your way up. And then that's like the whole campaign, you go through like the whole amateur side of the game. And then you move your way up to getting like a factory team if you finish good enough at Loretta's in the campaign. And then it like goes through a whole system. That would be super cool to have in an MX versus ATV game. And guess what? The tracks are already set up for that. We already have Loretta Lynn 100% from the developer Loretta Lynn replica tracks on MX versus ATV All Out. We already have that. Literally, all they would have to do is add in, like, I think it'd be really cool if you started out on a 50cc bike, right? You go in there and do your 50cc race at Loretta's, and then however you finish on that, you, like, move your way up to a 85cc bike on there, and race at Loretta's again, and then you see where you're at, and then it like takes maybe a combination of all those things for what kind of deals you're going to get. Maybe you could get like a Team Green ride on a 125 or something, or a 250F, and then you got to go Loretta's again, and that's kind of like the start of the campaign, You start off as an amateur like that on the Loretta Lynn's track. They already have a Loretta Lynn's track on MX vs. ATV All Out, so they already have a partnership with MX Sports. They could do this very easily. This is all very in the realm of possibility, right? So then you, depending on how good you do, like on the 250 or the 125, right, that's your, like, whatever kind of deal you might get, whatever kind of factory ride deal, or like mid-tier, not like full-blown factory team, but mid-tier team, or then maybe if you just suck, you got to go full privateer. And then you move your way up to the pro ranks, right? They already have all of the replica, not all of them, but a lot of the replica national tracks. Maybe you can move your way up to that point and then move your way into Supercross, and that's kind of how the campaign would develop. But that would be super cool because that all fits into like a MX versus ATV Pro game, you know what I mean? It's like you're literally taking the path of becoming pro in motocross or supercross. So it would all fit into like the name of the game, the design around the game, making it a little more skill gapped, a little more difficult. I'm not saying you got to make a simulator, right? We already have a simulator. I'm not saying make an MX versus ATV simulator. I'm just saying making something like Reflex, but just a little more, just like 10% more skill gap than Reflex, if that's even possible. I don't know. Reflex is already super skill gap for an arcade motocross game, but I think it'd be cool just to see. And without the, without the MX GP Pro jankiness elements, without the instant pop-off, and it would be hard to make a true, full-blown sim arcade hybrid, 50-50 hybrid. That would be super hard to make that, because if you know these motocross games, simulators don't mix well with arcade-style physics and feelings, and arcade motocross games don't really mix well with simulator-type track design. You know what I mean? They're two different worlds. Simulators and arcade motocross games are two different worlds. I don't think you're ever going to be able to have a perfect sim, like a MX simulator mixed with an arcade motocross game hybrid. I don't think you're ever going to be able to have that kind of thing. I know LCQ Studios was kind of, bragging about that, acting like they were really going to be able to make that kind of game at the beginning. I remember them commenting on my videos a few times, like, just wait and see, Spence, just wait and see. Well, I'm still waiting to see LCQ Studios. I'm still waiting. That was 4 years ago, Big Hoss. I'm not knocking you. I mean, you're a small team, but man, you're taking on a big task. That's a daunting task to just hop in this motocross gaming realm and try to make a true arcade sim hybrid. And I think they're starting to, now that they're years into development here, years and years into development, now they're starting to see some of the limitations, some of the difficulties, some of the things that is going to really hold their game back. And I've seen some of their screenshots and videos. Their game doesn't look bad or anything for the type, the group of dudes making it and the amount of people not having like a full-blown AAA studios and stuff like that. But I just don't know if it's going to really be able to be that true sim arcade hybrid. Oh my gosh, it's going to blow up. I don't know if it can ever really be like that. And of course, one dude made MX Simulator, so I guess anything's possible. Literally, one dude made MX Simulator, and you've seen what that game's turned into. So you don't have to have that, AAA studio to make something amazing, but I don't know. LCQ Studios been on a little bit of a bumpy road the past year or two on their development cycle for their whole, going to Loretta's, starting off on a small bike, more like arcade sim hybrid game. But I think if you could take and I almost wanted this with MX versus ATV's next game, whether it was pro or not, I almost wanted it to be like Reflex, but a little bit more anyways, because that's the natural progression you would think of, that's what I thought we were going to get after Reflex back in the day instead of Alive. I thought we were going to get something that was very similar to Reflex, but just a little more skill gapped, a little more difficult, a little more, advancements to everything, a little bit more separation you can have from everybody else, a little bit more whoop skill gap in particular, right? Little things like that. Really thought that was going to be the next game after Reflex, but then you guys know GHQ Nordic took over, made, Alive and MX vs. ATV Supercross. It basically just went downhill from there. So now with MX vs. ATV All Out, Rainbow Studios has come back. They're trying to dig their way out of the hole that they've dug down in, right? They're trying to dig their way back to where Reflex was. So I don't know. I think their next MX vs. ATV game might be on the level of Reflex, maybe. But I think it's going to be another 2 or 3 MX vs. ATV games before we ever get this actual MX vs. ATV Pro or whatever I'm thinking in my head, And like I say, I don't want MX vs. ATV to just turn into a arcade sim hybrid style game company. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying that would be really sick if they did make a Reflex, but just a little more advanced, a little bit more advanced physics, a little bit more natural feeling everywhere, a little more skill gap, maybe a slightly more chance of popping off on bigger jumps, not smaller jumps like MXGP Pro Janky, but I just think that'd be really cool. And if they advance the, setup tuning side of it, have a real stability style system to it or something, that'd be kind of cool. But it's just hard to make that combination game, to me, I feel like Reflex is just an arcade motocross game. It's not a simulator in any kind of way to me. Some people have that idea in their head, but that's just because they're so used to these super arcadey motocross games like the official Supercross game and MX versus ATV Supercross, these super arcadey motocross games, and they get to Reflex, and they're like, oh my god, this game is so, more skill-gapped and everything. This is kind of like a simulator. No, it's not, dog. Reflex is nothing like a simulator. Some of you dudes have that in your head. It is not like a simulator. It don't even have a stability setting. It literally doesn't even have a stability setting. It's not a simulator unless it has a stability setting. I hate to break it to you, but it's not. You can hop on Reflex and get around the track your first day in the game. You cannot do that on a simulator. It takes you about a month before you can even get around a track without falling down. That is not how Reflex is at all, right? It's not a simulator. It's not even an arcade sim hybrid, in my opinion. I feel like Reflex is just a really solid, good, skill-gapped, for its time, arcade motocross game. That's all it really is. So, it'd be interesting to see MX vs. ATV do this in the future. I don't know. It's just a little idea. Not that they're trying to steal from LCQ Studios, but I'm just saying that kind of game's inevitable. I think we're going to get that at some point anyways, whether it comes from LCQ Studios, whether it comes from MX vs. ATV, whether it comes from Milestone going in there and making an official motocross game. But I just think that'd be so cool, starting on a 50cc bike, working your way up at Loretta's. Maybe they have a Ponca City replica, so you could go to a couple, or Mini-O's or something, so you could go to a couple little different big amateur races, right? And then depending on how you do, that's how you work through the campaign, and that would just be cool to have a motocross game with 50cc's, 85cc bikes in it to begin with, right? It'd be so cool to have that, and that'd be kind of a way to integrate that in. But I just know MX versus ATV at this current point with All Out, this is the best opportunity we have had thus far from that. There is a full-blown MX Sports, AMA Loretta Lynn's replica track in MX versus ATV All Out right now for the first time ever. So we already have this in here. It would really just be a matter of putting it into a campaign in a game, working from the 50 to the 85 to the 125. Then you get on the 250. Then you get on a factory team if you do good enough. Then once you're in the pros, if you didn't do good enough to get on a factory team, then you got to race on a privateer team or like a mid-tier team to get yourself back to that factory team or whatever. That'd be just really cool to see that kind of a progression in a campaign system, and it would be cool. Just be cool to see that all integrated in there into a pro-style game on top of everything else, like a reflex but a little more advanced type game, right? Like, the way I'm thinking of it in my head is literally like a Reflex 2, what a Reflex 2 would be. It's funny how Reflex 2 in MX versus ATV Pro is kind of the same idea in a way, because Reflex 2, you would have to have something that's like Reflex but more advanced. That would be a Reflex 2. It's kind of like having a MX versus ATV Pro when you think about it. They're both really the same thing in a way when you sit down and think of it in your head. But definitely let me know down in the comments what you guys think about this kind of a game. Like I say, I'm not saying make a full-blown arcade sim hybrid, because I think that's literally impossible, and I think anybody that's really played enough of arcade motocross games and enough of simulators will understand how impossible that really is. They're just so different worlds. They're just so different animals. It's hard to mix them evenly, right? I'm not saying you can't make like an arcade motocross game with just a little kiss of a simulator, because you can definitely do that. Or you can take a simulator that's got a little kiss of an arcade motocross game to it. That's almost how I would consider MX Bikes. MX Bikes is a simulator, but it's got like a kiss of arcade motocross feeling to it, right? Whereas MX Simulator to me is just full-blown 100% simulator, right? And MXGP Pro tried to have a kiss of a simulator, but it pretty much failed at it. Reflex is really just, it doesn't even have a kiss of a simulator. It's just a really good, solid, fleshed out arcade, motocross game physics-wise and, track design-wise and all that. But it's the smart business move at this current point to get people excited about your next motocross game. It is the business move for sure. Because most time people don't give a crap about these campaigns and these motocross games, so a way to make that a little more interesting, especially in the MX vs. ATV series, would be the ticket for sure, bro. But either way, appreciate you guys watching all the videos. Later, dudes.